At this point, it is criminal to say that, not to say that you are customer-centric as an ambitious company. But we all know it's much easier said than done. In Marion's experience, applying customer journey ops is the secret sauce. Based right here in beautiful Brussels and working at Orange Business, Marion is here to illustrate how customer journey ops can solve all of your silo problems. So please give her a warm welcome.
First, I would like to thank Milan. Thanks for the invitation. We've talked together quite for a while, but I've never joined. So contrary to the first speakers, that's my first time here. And maybe to kind of scan my audience a bit, I would like to know who is more from the enterprise architect side? Raise your hand. And maybe those who are more like service designers. Okay, right. So I have the right talk for the right audience. I hope so. And I'm really, really looking forward for the discussion afterwards, not specifically from the content of it. So I'm in kind of right in the middle. I represent customer experience for organization and in my day-to-day job. And so basically, I think for quite a while, customer experience has been the focus of many organizations. Everyone wants to improve their customer experience, but actually in practice, it seems quite difficult to align when it comes to delivering the customer experience sustainably and systematically. And I think that's where really is the gap, the untapped value between customer experience and enterprise architecture. And I feel that there is actually a missed opportunity, and that's really what I want to discuss with you today. So I'm after the connection here. Feel free to interrupt me, though there is a time assigned to me, but I hope that we will have more time for questions. So I know that for many, customer experience is defined as more the experience that the customer feel and live by interacting with the experience. But when you think a bit about customer experience from the organization perspective, it's basically the ambition that we design for delivering that experience throughout all the interaction. It could be the moments, the journeys, or the lifelong relationship, right? We hope that we keep our customer for a long term. And on the other side, I hear and I also see, and sorry already if my definition of enterprise architecture is not the right one, so I'm also here to learn and discuss on that. But for me, enterprise architecture essentially is the internal system that makes that ambition executable. So how are you designing the capabilities, the technologies, the process, and the people from within? So we see often, and we often say that the customer experience is bringing the outside-in perspective, whereas enterprise architecture is going to help you deliver the inside-out experience. And here I would like you to think for a minute. Can we actually intentionally, and this resonates well with our first speaker, and you will see there is a lot of resonance here, can we intentionally design for the experience, I mean the customer experience, without designing how the organization will deliver it? So again, for me, it's the heart of the collaboration will deliver the actual customer experience. You cannot just design and map the experience without collaborating with the enterprise architect who will actually enable your design in the end. So in Orange Business, and that's where I work, and that's also a concept that I've developed throughout the years, we like to talk about customer experience orchestration. And essentially, if you keep in mind one thing from this talk, is that I clearly see three aspects to deliver value through customer experience orchestration. So it's about focusing on the customer journey. And I would actually argue that you need to go beyond that journey. You need to look into the business processes, which are actually delivering the experience throughout the journey. But you also need to think about the system, right? You need to think about the customer experience, the data, and the AI tech stack or the technology that will deliver upon it. And I think really the value is not to think about those in a distinctive manner, but it's really to see how you bring those things together. And that's where you can really work on that customer experience. So I think many of you, especially the service designer, you're very familiar to the concept of service blueprint. So it's really how you start from mapping the customer journey. And please don't read it. It's meant, especially not for reading it. I will actually just make you look at the colors. So here really I see that the service blueprint is an extension of the journey map. And I think you demonstrated us this morning that it goes way beyond just the journey mapping when you design and you map in the design craft. But I see it as a strategic bridge between customer experience or the customer journey and the actual technology. And throughout the years, I've seen all kind of look and feel service blueprint, very busy one, very colorful one. But when it comes to untangling the mess, I have an anecdote. I was part of a strategic meeting and C-level reporting to a CEO. And when we presented that service blueprint, he came to me and he said, "Thank you for making this mess understandable." And I think that if you put yourself not just in the shoes of your customers, but in the shoes of your CEO, and here we're really talking about designing for organization, right? It's very difficult when one day they receive the designers showing the customer journey with some data, the NPS going up and down, right? And then the next day they receive the process people showing another type of map, completely disconnected from the customer journey. And then in another meeting, then you have the enterprise architect or the technologist, and then they have this massive technological stack map. How on earth can they make the link? And this is the way I think that we can really try to make a difference when you actually add in your usual service blueprint, not just the customer journey and the front and backstage, because I believe that you all know about your service blueprint kind of guidelines, but really adding the system into that. So how do you link that? But okay, service blueprint is very nice, but it's very static, right? So it's a strategic tool, but it's static. And how do you make it more dynamic? And I think you've discussed about that probably in other conference that I have not been in, but I believe, I really strongly believe, and I'm not saying that it's the only way, but it is one way to think about it, that to move from static service blueprint towards more dynamic and operation, there is something called customer journey ops that can be a solution. I'm not saying it goes for all the organization, but surely it could be a tool that you might want to think about. And I think it's also bridge the gap between the work of the CXers, the designers, and the architect. So I think you again mentioned it in the morning. And I really, really would say that over and over again. You cannot be in 2025 still working in a CX team if you are not able to link your customer experience action to your P&L. And so the first thing that you really have to do, and that might go really from a more business perspective on customer experience, is that you need to organize your journey operation or your journey teams around your customer journey, but also to deliver value not just to your customer, but also to your business. And how you do that? As you mentioned earlier, design is a now I forgot, horizontal kind of function, but so is CX. And here CX, I mean that in the broad term in the organization. And so you really need to align your customer journeys to your business journeys. But the issue that we see is that oftentimes every function owns the customer experience. So if I look at awareness, you will say, who owns CX? Marketing. And then if I look at acquisition, who owns CX? Sales, right? And then I can go on and on. Who owns support, customer care? And in the end, the issue that we have is that everybody owns customer experience, but nobody is accountable for it. And so the thing that I've found in my practice that really help when you are actually developing this customer experience from both a service design and enterprise architect perspective is when you start aligning on the KPIs. And this is really, really key for making people collaborate together. Why? Because if it's not in your strategic objective, it won't happen. You won't find the people to work around your JourneyOps teams. So this is something that you probably are already doing, and I'm really happy to discuss again further with you if you are. But I think that's an interesting point, which is a little bit sometimes unseen when we talk about JourneyOps. So enough about, these nice things. How does it work in practice? So I think what's interesting, and the idea is not to make this kind of very top-down driven JourneyOps organization, but it's top management will define what are your strategic objectives. And then you build your journey teams around those journeys. You need to have your framework in place. But essentially, for this collaborative aspect, I think it's very important that you find those CX champions which already are in the organization. So again, it can be someone from marketing, it can be someone for sales. It doesn't matter as long as those people have the same goal to align on the KPIs that you have fixed together. So here again, this is very high level, but in practice, it makes sense. And it's actually interesting to see that you also are able to go beyond design issues. So those teams, they can focus on different kind of customer experience action. And I could give you an example. So when I was working actually also in telco, we could see that from data and triangulated data, so different source of data, both from customer care, from CX, from NPS surveys, and also from usage data. We could see that the usage journey had a lot of issues. We could see that the signal was the same from all sources of data. But what we couldn't see, if we were just from a design team perspective or an enterprise architecture team, is the actual root cause. And my point here is that you really need to have cross-functionality in those teams. The issue that we had wasn't related to the usual usage of the actual tools, but it was from the network. And here, my point is here that we needed to have the data scientist that was able to go and dig the data from the network, which actually created the issue in the customer experience. And here really, my point here is that you really need to have cross-functional team. And I think that on this management layer, you need to have also the enterprise architect, because they will have the ability to understand the root cause of your issue. So again, it's very nice to have design ops-led customer journey, But in the end, if you cannot go to the root to analyze your data and likewise design the organization to actually activate upon those data, you might really lose upon something. So I think there is an untapped values of working in silos. And this is one way to solve it. So to the usual stack that I design, I'd like to really add that layer of CX technological stack. And maybe where I disagree a bit from what you said this morning, you said something along the lines that AI is not taking decision. Well, here I would maybe challenge, and I hope we can discuss about that later, that we are coming there with Gen AI. Things that we used to do with, let's say, business rules starts to actually move towards, yes. But anyhow, so I think if you think about customer experience, not just from a design perspective, but also from an architectural perspective, it's very important that you think about where do you get the data for your design. So for your design data-based decision, but also how can you activate, how can you deliver on that experience? And I think that's where really the gap is closing, and those who are already aware of that are moving really fast towards that. So I'm coming to the end. So I think the mapping exercise is still relevant. Though we can do a lot with AI, I still think that the mapping exercise is relevant. And for me, the relevancy is not just in the map, it's really about how it brings people together to collaborate on the mapping exercise. So you don't map, when you do your design, like you mentioned this morning, you don't map it in your own corner. It's actually the facilitation of the collaborative mapping, which is important. So I would say set it, map what matters, involve the enterprise architect in your mapping exercise and data scientists, run it, manage journey across silos, build cross-functional team, and really involve, again, the enterprise architect, and scale it, architect for execution. So you need to also remember that whatever decision that you are taking on the architecture side will have an impact on the experience of the customer. Voilà.